My name's Evan, I'm 33, and for most of my adult life I thought loyalty and love were interchangeable. That if you showed up, paid your dues, helped when it counted, people would value you, not for what you gave, but because you gave it. Turns out, in some families, that's just not how the math works. I work in finance, specifically real estate acquisitions, which sounds more glamorous than it is. But after a few lucky investments and a promotion at 29, I found myself in a position most people in my family had only dreamed of: financial stability. Not flashy rich, but comfortable. I didn't grow up with that. My parents, Greg and Linda, were always scraping by. My dad worked construction. My mom did odd jobs, mostly cleaning houses and sometimes whitishing. Money was always tight, and we were constantly reminded of it. "We don't have Evan money," my dad used to joke after I started doing well. I'd laugh along, not realizing how sharp that edge actually was. Despite the weird jabs and passive-aggressive comments, I tried to show up for them. I bought them a new refrigerator when theirs finally gave out. Paid off my younger brother Logan's student loans, $12,800 in one go, when he got laid off during CO and couldn't catch a break. Helped my parents upgrade their minivan after it started making that death rattle sound every time they backed out of the driveway. I didn't make a big deal out of it. No lectures, no strings, just help. Because that's what you do for family, right? So when their 35th anniversary came around, I wanted to do something unforgettable. Something that would lift the weight off their shoulders. I paid off the mortgage on their house quietly. I didn't even tell them until I handed them the letter from the bank. I'd wrapped it in gold tissue paper, tucked it into a little box, and wrote, "No more monthly payments. Just enjoy." They were stunned. My mom cried. My dad kept shaking his head and mumbling, "You didn't have to do that." But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like I finally belonged. Like I wasn't just the ATM they tolerated. I thought maybe this was a turning point. Spoiler, it wasn't. 3 weeks later, I got a group text from my mom. It started off like any normal family message. "Hey, quick update on the house." Then it took a sharp turn. "We've decided to give your old room to Logan's fiancée, Sierra. Unlike you, she actually contributes to this family. Hope you understand." I just stared at it. Then came the follow-up. "Don't make this awkward, Evan. Be grateful you were ever included." Be grateful I was ever included. I blinked. Once, twice. My stomach turned. I wasn't angry yet, just stunned. Like when you touch a hot stove and your brain hasn't quite caught up with the pain, this wasn't about a room. It was about being erased, replaced. I hadn't even met Sierra properly yet. She'd only been around for a few months, and suddenly she was getting the room I grew up in, after I literally removed the debt tied to the house. I typed a reply. Just one word. Noted. That was it. I didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't ask why, because I knew why. Sierra was sweet, photogenic, and endlessly agreeable. She gushed about family values and wore matching flannel pajamas with my mom at Christmas. She brought over Pinterest-worthy baked goods and offered to help around the house with just the right balance of humility and self-congratulation. She was, as my mom once said, a dream daughter-in-law. The kind of person my parents always wanted in their family portrait. I, apparently, was just the awkward edge they were ready to crop out. I sat with that message for an hour, just stared at it, letting it sink in like slow poison. Then I picked up my phone and made 3 calls. That's when things started to shift. Call 1 was to my lawyer, Talia. We'd worked together on a few property acquisitions, and she knew the structure of the house transfer inside and out. When I paid off the mortgage, I'd had the deed revised and put into a trust, technically owned by a limited liability company I controlled. My parents never asked about the fine print. They were just so happy the bank was off their backs. They didn't realize the deed no longer had their names at the top. They'd assumed it was a gift. In some ways, it was. Call 2 was to the HOA security liaison for their gated community. Since I'd been listed as an owner of record, I had admin access to the gate key fobs and account privileges. It took 5 minutes to revoke theirs. Just like that, their fobs were paperweights. Call 3 was to the phone company. Their family plan? Under my name. It always had been. I'd set it up years ago when Logan cracked his iPhone screen for the 3rd time and couldn't afford a replacement. I bundled everyone in, paid the bill monthly. It wasn't even a big expense. I'd just forgotten about it. Until now. By Friday, I started getting texts. First one was from my mom. "Hey, the gate's not working. Did something change?" Then from Logan. "Dude, my phone service is down. What's going on?" And finally, my dad. "Need to talk. Call me when you can." I didn't respond. Not yet. I went out that night, treated myself to sushi and a drink. My phone buzzed quietly on the table while I watched the sunset from the restaurant window. I wasn't angry, I was clear. That was the strangest part. No adrenaline, no shouting into pillows, just a calm, sharp understanding. I had been used. Not just taken for granted, but used, and now the balance was shifting. The next morning, Talia confirmed everything was ready. Legally, the house could be reclaimed within 72 hours due to breach of trust, specifically repurposing the property. Without my consent, I hadn't planned on going nuclear, not at first. But now I was just getting started. That afternoon, I drove by the house. Sierra's SUV was in the driveway. There were balloons tied to the mailbox. "Welcome home," scribbled in metallic ink. I saw my mom through the front window, laughing with Sierra over what looked like mimosas. My dad was on the porch, sipping coffee like he hadn't just erased his son from the picture entirely. I didn't knock. I just sat in my car for a moment, watching. The house I'd grown up in had become a stage for someone else's fairy tale. Then I pulled away, called Talia again and said, "Let's proceed." The notice went out Monday morning. Official language, cold and clear. A termination of permissive tenancy due to breach of terms. They had 72 hours to vacate or respond. I knew they wouldn't understand the legalese at first. They'd probably skim it, scoff, maybe even laugh. But by the time it clicked, the gears were already in motion. I got the first call from Logan. He didn't even say hello. "You're evicting our parents," he barked. "What is wrong with you?" I kept my voice calm. "Not evicting, reclaiming. The property was transferred into a trust under an LLC control. They repurposed it without authorization. That voids the agreement." "What? Agreement? You paid off their house. You said it was a gift." "No," I said. "I never said it was a gift. I just didn't explain the paperwork, because they didn't ask. You'd think someone would read what they sign when the house they live in is involved." There was a pause. He wasn't dumb, just entitled. "They didn't mean anything by that text," he added quickly, like that made this all disappear. "It was just a misunderstanding. You're overreacting." Ah, there it was, the family motto. I smiled bitterly to myself. "You know, Logan, if Sierra's such a contributor to this family, I'm sure she can contribute a new place to live." Click. I didn't hear from him again that day. The next one to call was my mom. Her tone was softer. That fake, brutal kindness she used when trying to manipulate. "Sweetheart," she began, "we got this paper. I think there's been a mix-up." "There hasn't. It says we have to vacate." "Honey, that can't be right. This is our home." "No, it's a home you lived in thanks to my generosity, and then decided I wasn't family enough to have a room in. That was just," she exhaled sharply, then went for the classic pivot. "We didn't mean it like that. You've been distant. We thought you were pulling away. So you preemptively pushed me out." More silence, then, defensively, "We're your parents, Evan. We raised you, gave you everything." I almost laughed. "You gave me secondhand clothes and resentment. I gave you a debt-free house and a phone plan. One of those is easier to walk away from." She hung up. No tears, no apologies, just stunned silence before the line went dead. That night, I got a call from Talia. They've contacted an attorney, tried to claim the house was gifted unconditionally. And? We have signed documentation. Your bases are covered. They'll stall, but unless they want to drag it to court and rack up bills they can't afford, they'll leave. Let them stall, I said. I want them to feel the pressure. By midweek, the neighborhood gossip machine kicked in. I started getting subtle messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. A few tried the guilt angle. Don't you think this is a bit extreme? You should call your mom. She's really upset. Family isn't something you just throw away. Evan. And yet, I thought, they discarded me with a single group text. I didn't reply to anyone. I just let the silence speak for me. By Friday, the official lockout notice was ready to be served. I scheduled it for Sunday morning. Quiet hours, minimal attention, but of course, nothing ever stays quiet in a gated community, especially when your family treats everything like a performance. That Saturday evening, I received a final message. A voice memo from my dad. Son, I don't know what happened between us, but this isn't how family acts. We were proud of you. Maybe we didn't always show it, but this? You're burning everything down. I listened twice. Proud. Proud was never the word they used. Disappointed, confused, resentful, sure. But proud? That was new. Still, it was too late. That night, I drove up to the gate. Their key fob still didn't work. I saw them trying to buzz in from the call box. As I pulled up, my mom spotted my car and jogged toward me, waving her arms. I rolled the window down halfway. Evan, she said breathlessly. Please, we can talk about this. Don't do this. Don't make me do this, I corrected. She blinked. You're really going to make your own parents homeless? You made your son a stranger, I said. Now I'm just making it official. The gate opened. I pulled through without another word. Behind me, the guard stepped out and asked if they had clearance. They didn't. And that was just step one. Sunday morning arrived, overcast and quiet. Fitting, really. I parked a block away and walked, not because I wanted to sneak up on them, but because I wanted the distance. Time to think. Time to let the weight of this settle. I wasn't just reclaiming property. I was reclaiming power. The kind I hadn't had since I was a teenager, standing awkwardly in that same driveway, holding a community college acceptance letter, while my parents asked why I wasn't more like Logan. I approached just as the notice was being delivered. The process server, a quiet, professional guy named Luis, handed over the envelope with a clipped nod. My parents stood on the porch, robes still on, faces drawn tight. Sierra peeked through the blinds from inside. Logan wasn't home. He worked. Sundays now, a double shift at the dealership. Guess all that contributing came with a time card. My mom opened the envelope like it was a snake about to bite her. My dad read over her shoulder, mouth slowly falling open. You're really doing this? He muttered. I didn't answer. I just stood on the sidewalk, hands in my coat pockets, watching the realization ripple across their faces. After everything we did for you, my mom added, voice rising. You think you're better than us now? No, I said evenly. I know I'm not like you. That used to bother me. Now it doesn't. Evan, she said, stepping down a stair. We said some things we shouldn't have. But it's not like we meant them. We were just trying to build a future. For Logan, for Sierra. You already have yours, stung in a way I didn't expect. They weren't even trying to deny it, just rationalizing, as if I was an investment that had matured, and now it was someone else's turn to be cashed in. My dad finally spoke again. You've made your point. You can stop this now. I haven't even started, I said. That's when Sierra opened the front door and stepped out. Still in her pajamas, silk ones, pale blue, probably something she'd picked out for the first breakfast in our new home, aesthetic she was clearly going for. Is this really necessary? She asked. Her voice was gentle, like she was trying to appeal to reason. We're family now, That word again. I stared at her. I'm sorry. What was your contribution to this family again? Ah, right. Taking my room and smiling for group selfies? Her face flushed. My mom shot her a look, and Sierra quietly retreated. Luis gave them the rundown, 72 hours to vacate, or we proceed with formal eviction. He handed them a printed checklist. Do not remove or damage fixtures. No alteration to the property, no retaliation, the usual legalese. My dad tried to interrupt, but Luis raised a hand and calmly kept speaking. This wasn't his first time serving entitled people who thought rules didn't apply to them. After he left, I lingered. My mom folded her arms. You think you won something, don't you? No, I said. This isn't about winning. It's about clarity. She scoffed. You're pathetic. You'll end up alone, bitter, unloved. I nodded slowly. Maybe, but at least I won't have to buy people's affection to get invited to Thanksgiving. That hit harder than I expected. She turned her face slightly, blinking. More than normal. My dad just muttered, You're not the man I thought you'd grow up to be. That's funny, I replied. You are exactly the man I expected you to be. I walked away before either of them could reply. 3 hours later, I started getting calls. Not from them, those had gone quiet, but from mutual acquaintances, distant, relatives, old neighbors. I even got a Facebook message from a church acquaintance of theirs. Apparently, they were telling everyone I tricked them. That I'd legally swindled them out of their home in some cruel act of revenge. My mom had even posted a long, passive-aggressive Facebook update about losing everything because of pride and ego. I knew what they were doing. They were laying the groundwork for sympathy, casting themselves as victims in a story they wrote with their own mouths. The text that started this, the one where they said Sierra actually contributes, and I should just be grateful I was ever included, had magically vanished from the family group chat, deleted, scrubbed, as if it had never existed. Too bad I kept screenshots. I didn't post them. Not yet. But I saved them. Forwarded them to my lawyer, too, just in case this turned into something more drawn out. By Monday, my parents had started packing. Logan came by that evening. I saw him standing in the driveway, arms crossed, watching. The moving truck pull up. He looked angry. No, betrayed. Like I'd violated some sacred code of brotherhood by refusing to be the cash cow anymore. He didn't acknowledge me when I drove past, just glared. Sierra was sitting on the porch with a box of houseplants in her lap. I didn't stop. I just kept driving, but later that night he sent me a message. Logan, you burned the whole house down just to prove a point. Congrats, we'll remember this. I stared at it for a while before responding. Me. You're right, I did it to prove a point. But I didn't burn down the house, I just took back the match you were all holding. He didn't reply. The house was scheduled to be relisted the following week. Not sold yet. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. Rent it out? Sell it? Leave. It empty for a while. As a monument to a boundary finally drawn, I hadn't decided. But I did know one thing. I'd never walk through that front door again. I didn't sleep much the night they moved out. Not out of guilt. Surprisingly, that part had faded. But from a quiet sort of grief. The grief that settles in, not when someone dies, but when you realize the version of them you loved never existed in the first place. I had spent most of my adult life trying to earn their respect, their warmth, their recognition. I kept thinking, if I just did enough, if I helped enough, maybe this time they'll see me as part of the family, not just a walking wallet. But that fantasy had shattered. The next morning, I drove by the house one last time. The driveway was empty. No cars. No porch furniture. Even the wreath my mom hung every season. This one a cheesy spring design with fake tulips. And the "At home is where the heart is" plaque was gone. I parked at the curb and walked up the path. It was quiet. Peaceful, almost. The kind of silence that follows a storm. I unlocked the door with my fob, stepped inside, and just stood there for a moment. The walls were still the pale beige my parents insisted was neutral and elegant. The furniture was gone, but small traces of them lingered. Faint scuff marks on the hardwood from where the dining table used to sit. A nail sticking out of the wall where a wedding photo once hung. The faint smell of cinnamon potpourri, despite the air being still and stale. I walked slowly through the house. In what used to be my room, now stripped bare, I noticed the closet door ajar. Inside, high on the shelf, was a box labeled Evan, old school stuff. I didn't remember packing it. I reached up, pulled it down, and sat on the floor. Inside were scraps of my childhood, a second-place spelling bee ribbon from 5th grade, a crayon drawing I'd made of our old dog, Max, a photo from my high school graduation, one my mom must have printed herself. Everyone in the photo is smiling, except me. I looked stiff, awkward, like I didn't belong. I placed the box back on the Eeyore shelf. I didn't need it. On my way out, I locked the door and stood on the porch for a while, letting the sun hit my face. It was a different house now. It had always been, really. I just finally stopped pretending it was something more. Later that week, I met with Talia and the property management company. We went over a few options: sell, rent, or hold. I thought about it for a few days, but eventually landed on something else entirely. I decided to donate it, not sell it, not lease it to another couple looking for a suburban starter home. I worked with a local nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors transition into safe housing. They ran a program that placed families into homes temporarily while helping them rebuild their lives. I offered them the house for 2 years, rent-free, on the condition they take care of it and use it as a stepping stone for someone who actually needed it. It felt right. 2 months later, a woman named Maya and her 2 kids moved in. Her story was hard: abusive husband, years of financial manipulation, and a long battle to get her children back after being forced out of their home. When I met her at the front door with the keys, she was shaking. "I never thought I'd have a place like this," she whispered. I just smiled and handed her the fob. "It's yours now. No strings," she cried. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel used. I felt useful. Meanwhile, the fallout on my side of the family was still brewing. My parents ended up moving into a small rental about an hour out of town. Nothing fancy, definitely a downgrade. They didn't reach out, and I didn't expect them to. I heard through the grapevine that my mom tried to spin the story as Evan manipulated us out of our home, but people aren't as gullible as she thinks. Screenshots circulated. The original group text made its rounds. Turns out, even sympathy has a shelf life when the receipts start piling up. Logan and Sierra, they got married a few. Months later, small ceremony, no invite. Not that I wanted one. Funny enough, I got a call from Logan about 2 weeks after the wedding. He didn't say hello, just, "I know you think you won or whatever, but you didn't. All you did was prove you're as selfish as you always were." I let him talk. "You're so obsessed with control that you'd rather burn the family down than let someone else have a piece of it." When he was done, I responded with one sentence. "Logan, I gave you a piece of it. Remember your student loans? The car? The family plan? All gifts. No repayment. You all just thought I wouldn't notice when you decided I wasn't worth a seat at the table." He didn't reply. Just hung up. I haven't heard from him since. Eventually, I removed myself from the family group chats, blocked a few numbers. I didn't make a big announcement or stage a dramatic farewell. I just stepped away. Quietly. Fully. I spent the next year focused on work, travel, and people who saw me for more than what I could provide. My friendships deepened. I started dating again, cautiously at first. Therapy helped. So did solitude. For the first time in my life, my silence wasn't something forced. It was something chosen. One afternoon, about a year after the fallout, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo, one I hadn't seen in over a decade. was me and Logan as kids sitting on the porch steps of the house. I must have been around 10. He was 6. We were both laughing, faces smudged with popsicle juice, and my arm was thrown casually around his shoulder. There was a sticky note attached. I wish things had been different. Mom, no apology, no explanation, just regret in its most diluted form. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say, but I didn't throw the photo away either. I tucked it into a drawer, not because I wanted to remember the good times, but because I wanted to remember why I walked away. In the end, the story isn't about revenge. It's about self-respect, about drawing a line, not to punish, but to protect. About realizing that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't yell, beg, or try to fix what's broken, but to stand up quietly and leave the room. So that's what I did. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back.